This new unit, we're going to take another look at something geometrically, basically pictures. We're going to start looking at angles now. So we've talked about areas and perimeters and volumes. Now we're going to look at how things fit together in terms of their angles. So today's about some of the basic properties. And the first property, if you have a straight line and it is met by another line, okay, the angles that are produced always add up to 180 degrees. And we call this supplementary. So here's my straight line, obviously. It was met by another line. It turns out this side's 95 and this side's 85 degrees. If I add those two things together, they come out to 180. They have to always come out to 180. And if the line was drawn at more of an angle, like this one here, I've got 140 on one side and I've got 40 on the other side. Again, they have to come out to 180. It doesn't matter how that line is meeting it, what angle it is, the two ones that are produced have to be 180. Why do I like that idea? Well, I like it so I can figure out missing angles. If I have a straight line and it's met by another one, the two angles, the 53 and the missing one, have to make 180. In other words, I know that together, if I add them, I get 180. Well, this is something we know how to solve. We want to get x by itself, so I can do 180, take away 53, and x is 127 degrees. Has to positively work every single time if it's a straight line. If we try the next one, I see a straight line. It's met by another line. I know this has to be an unknown one, and together it has to make 180. Or 180 minus 65 has to be 115. There's no question about that. And you're going to try the next one. What do I know about this one? Well, I know this is my missing one. I can kind of cheat a little bit. I know if I take 180 and subtract 129, whatever's left, in this case 51, has to be the missing angle. And so I can write an equation out like we did at the beginning here and write out and solve it. But I can kind of cheat. If I know something's a straight line, that's always going to be 180 minus. And that's property number one. Property number two. If you have a right angle, shown by that little box, we've talked about the little square, right? That's what we did Pythagoras. We had to look for that box. Well, we know this little box always means 90 degrees. So if you're to break that box into parts, like this, you got one part, two parts. What do we know about those two parts? They have to add up to 90 degrees. Okay, like look at this example right here. 30 and 60 comes out to 90, and it has to because it says it's making a little box. That means we can use the same idea we just did. But instead of 180, it has to come out to 90. So let's take a look at some examples. Okay, I've got a box. I know this box means it has to be 90. So I've got 25 plus this other piece. Well, that means I can write down that x plus 25 has to be 90. In other words, 90 minus 25. X has to be 65. Now again, I can cheat. I could pretty much go right to this step because I know that it has to be 90 degrees. Okay, let's take a look at the next one. That looks like a 90 degrees, but there's no box telling me it's a 90 degrees. Right, this piece right here. So how am I going to figure out that piece? Well, what do I see in this diagram? I see a straight line being met by other lines. What do I know this makes? I know this entire thing has to be 180 degrees. So if I want to find the missing one, call it x, I can take 180, subtract the piece on this side and the piece on this side, because they have to add up to 180, and x must be 70. Okay, straight lines are 180, right? That was our trick. Boxes make 90s. Let's take a look at the next one. Ooh, this one looks pretty tricky. But what do I see? I see myself a straight line being met by 1, 2, 3 lines. Now, if I know most of the parts, I can figure out the missing part. There's something kind of tricky about this one. They gave us a box. What does that mean? it means this part right here where the box is 90 degrees. So what am I missing? Really only this little bit. How could I figure that out? Well, if I know the whole thing is a straight line, I know it has to be 180. So I can take 180 and subtract the 25, the 90, and the 15. And if I do that, we should end up with 50 degrees. Okay, so that one had a box and a straight line in it. So I have to think about my two rules that we have. Okay, and here's our last rule for today. So not only can lines meet each other, they can actually cross each other. If they do cross each other, the angles that are across from one another are always equal. Okay, so if I had a line and it got met, this angle is x, and this one was y. Well, we know they add up to 180. But if I actually continued that line and crossed, this one is also x, and this one is also y. Which, if I look at the diagram here, is an example. Two lines crossing, things that are opposite each other must be equal if they cross. Things that are opposite each other must be equal if they cross. That allows us to look at this next one and solve some things. So, 85 is across from 85. 45 is across from 45. And obviously the last one here, 50, is across from 50. Now I put them in color here so we can see them, right? The line, the angle between the two green lines is both the same. Between the two blue lines is both the same. A little bit harder for you guys to do because you only have a pencil, but you can use the same idea. Okay, so let's find some missing angles. Now, 132 is between this line and this line. That angle right there. Well, across from it must also be 132. But it said determine the missing angle. So we've got some other angles to figure out here. What else can we figure out? Well, here's an interesting idea. A straight line being met by another line. Can't I figure out the missing piece right here? Because this is 180 degrees. So if I take 180 and I subtract 132, I get 48 for x. This is 48. Well, if that's 48, so is this one, because it's across from x. So we can actually combine ideas now. Okay, lines meeting, lines crossing, you can use those in combination with each other. Okay, take a look at the next one. Oh, trick question here. I got a little box. What does the box mean? 90 degrees, which makes this one also 90 degrees. If this is 65, across from it must also be 65. So really, I knew 4 of the 6 angles right off the bat. The only one I'm missing is this one, and I know it's going to be the same as this one. So if I figure out either one of those two, I can figure out the opposite one, right? Now, right down the middle, what do I notice this is? There's a straight line. So these 3 things combined have to make 180. And I know parts of them. I know this piece, and I know this piece. So if I take 180, call this x, and I subtract 90, and I subtract 65, I end up with 25 for this piece, but also this piece, because they're across from one another. And so we actually combine all 3 ideas into that one question. And so you can try the last one here yourselves. What do we got? What do we know? Oh, I see some crossing lines. I like those ones. It's kind of a trick one. Nope, 27. 23 is across from this one. 23. I've got 4 of the 6 right off the bat. All I'm missing is the other one right here, let's call it, and they're the same, right? So let's find a straight line. There's a straight line. I've got 3 pieces of angles in there, and I know 2 of them. So if I subtract the 27 and the 23, leaves me 130 for this piece right here. Well, that's the same as that piece right there. Okay, there's our angle properties for today. We've got 3 of them. Straight lines have to make 180, so you can do 180 minus. Boxes have to make 90, so sometimes you can do 90 minus. And when lines cross, the opposite angles have to be equal. And we can use all those ideas together. And then the last question on our sheet, we're going to try that. So give this sheet a try. If you're stuck, come see me. This is our first day of angles, so we don't get confused right off the bat, and we need to practice these ones.